My daughter laughed at my phone like it was a joke. That day, I laughed with her, quietly, for her sake. But now, I look at that same phone on my kitchen counter and wonder, if she knew what it had recorded, would she still find it funny? It's not even that old. Just one of those classic flip ones, with real buttons and a little green screen. No, it doesn't have apps. No, it doesn't do facial recognition. But it rings when someone calls, and that's more than I can say for some people in this house. I'm Eleanor, 76, retired school librarian, widowed 14 years. I live alone, or rather I did, until Marnie started visiting more often. Not out of love, you understand. Out of obligation, or maybe calculation. "You shouldn't be living alone in that old house, Mom," she'd say. "You need help." Help, in her case, means her and her husband Charles coming around and moving things, throwing out what they call junk, making little jokes about my routines. Marnie used to be warm, at least I think she was. But now she only smiles when there's a purpose behind it. I've grown used to that look she gets, like she's already rearranging the living room in her mind. Not for me. For after me. I don't say much. I've never been the loud one. Even when I caught Charles going through the drawer where I keep my financial papers. "Just looking for the keys," he said. I didn't make a scene. But I started keeping copies elsewhere, just in case. The house isn't fancy. Brick, one story, built in 1961. But it's paid for, and every window knows my face. My husband Henry died in the back bedroom, in that narrow hospital bed we borrowed. Cancer, fast and mean. He left me the house and his old tools and that gentleness that still lives in the walls. I never remarried. What would be the point? I had my books, my porch swing, and enough savings to stay afloat. Until Marnie started circling like a hawk with a clipboard. She says it's about safety. What if you fall, Mom? What if you can't reach the phone? I told her, that's why I keep it clipped to my apron when I cook. She rolled her eyes. That dinosaur? Come on, you're the only one left on Earth who still uses that thing. That was 2 weeks ago. She'd come over with Charles and the boys, my grandsons, though they barely look up from their screens long enough to recognize me. She walked into the kitchen, pointed at my phone charging on the windowsill, and just laughed. God, Mom, I mean seriously, is this a museum piece? She held it up like it was a dirty sock. I smiled. It works. Barely. Charles chimed in, walking past me to open the fridge without asking. You should get something modern. That thing probably still runs on coal. I laughed a little, just to keep the peace. Marnie had brought me a box, a shiny white box with a brand new smartphone inside. Early Mother's Day gift, she said. We already set it up for you. It's got everything you need. I'll help you transfer your contacts. I thanked her. Polite, grateful on the surface. But I never threw the old phone out. It's still here, still charges, still flips open with that satisfying snap. And apparently, I didn't even know this at the time, it still records, not on purpose. I don't know how it happened. Maybe I pressed the wrong button when I set it down. Maybe it was an accident. Or maybe it was grace, reaching out through circuits and silence to give me one last truth before I lost everything. Because a few nights ago, while Marnie thought I was asleep in the den, she and Charles were in the dining room, talking low, confident, careless. And when I picked up the phone the next morning, I saw the little red icon blinking, one unheard recording. I listened to it with my tea growing cold in my hands. And what I heard, but no, That's for another day. Right now, I sit at my kitchen table, wiping the phone screen with a soft cloth like it's something sacred. Marnie may think I'm old and slow, and maybe in some ways I am, but I'm not blind. I'm not deaf. And I am not stupid. This phone, this outdated, ugly, stubborn little thing, may be the only witness I have. The only one who heard the truth while I slept in the next room, dreaming of people who still loved me. And now I need to decide what to do with that truth. What would Henry say? I close my eyes and almost hear him. Something calm, something quiet. Don't rush, Ellie, but don't let them walk over you. I won't, Henry. I won't. I used to think love covered things, made the sharp edges softer, that if you just loved hard enough, your child, your husband, your family, the rest would sort itself out. You could endure a lot if it was for love. And I did. After Henry died, Marnie started coming around more. At first, it felt like comfort. She'd bring soup, help me with the mail, check on bills. We cried together the first Thanksgiving. She held my hand that Christmas morning when I opened the box with Henry's old fountain pen, the one she'd had polished and boxed. I thought, maybe we'll be okay, just the two of us now. But grief changes shape. It recedes, but it leaves behind outlines, absences, expectations, habits. And over time, Marnie's visits changed. She started rearranging things without asking. Mom, why do you keep empty jars? Why do you still use that old kettle? This couch has to go. It smells like dust. It didn't matter that Henry and I bought that couch with our first tax refund, or that the kettle was a wedding gift from my mother. What mattered was that it didn't match her idea of how I should live. Charles came into the picture soon after. A man with a confident walk and 2 white teeth, always smelling like expensive soap. He called me Eleanor, like it was a performance. Never Mom, never even Mrs. Ames. Just Eleanor. Cold, flat, as if I were a neighbor he barely knew. He offered help often. Let me take a look at those gutters, or I'll manage that leak for you. But the help always came with a cost. He'd make jokes about my lack of insulation, talk loudly on the phone in my kitchen about how these old houses just eat up resources. Then, once, I found a flyer for a local assisted living place on my hallway table. No note. Just placed there like a suggestion, wrapped in silence. That was the first time I wondered. I tried not to overthink it. I told myself it was concern, that they were just preparing for the future, that maybe I was reading too much into their glances, the way Charles talked about streamlining family assets, or how Marnie would sigh every time I refused to sign a blank form. But then came the day of the frost. 2 winters ago. My pipes froze in the early morning. I didn't panic. I knew what to do. I'd handled worse in my time. But when I called Marnie, just to let her know I might be a little late to Sunday brunch, her voice turned sharp. "Oh, for God's sake, Mom," she snapped. "Maybe it's time to stop pretending you can do all this alone." I remember sitting there, holding the phone, staring at the back fence covered in ice. The tone of her voice wasn't worry. It was frustration, annoyance, like I'd become a burden she couldn't shake off. After that, things shifted. They started showing up more often, always with suggestions, always with smiles. Wouldn't it be better to live somewhere with a nurse on site? It's not about taking anything from you, Mom. It's about planning. For your safety. I nodded. I agreed. I played the role. But inside, something tightened. That was the year Charles asked if I had a power of attorney set up. Said it would just make things easier in case of emergencies. I told him I'd think about it. And then I made an appointment with my old lawyer from Henry's day, Mr. Darrow. He was half retired and wore hearing aids now, but his mind was sharp as a tack. He told me exactly what I needed to hear. Don't sign anything you haven't read, and don't hand power to people who treat you like a placeholder. I left his office with a copy of my deed, my will, and the folder labeled Estate Documents, E. Ames, tucked tightly in my bag. I didn't tell Marnie. I didn't tell anyone. Because something deep inside me, a slow, quiet voice I hadn't listened to in years, was starting to wake up. A voice that said, "Watch, listen, and wait." So I did. And now here I am, watching that same pattern unfold in the way they talk about my body, my mind, my habits. "She forgets things sometimes," Marnie said once to Charles, thinking I wasn't in the room. "She repeats herself." I remember that because it's the same thing I used to say about my own mother when I was too impatient to let her tell a story for the third time. I don't blame Marnie for aging me in her mind. I blame her for doing it with intent. There's a difference between concern and convenience. And I've come to realize that my decline, real or imagined, is starting to look useful to them. It makes certain things easier to justify, like accessing my accounts to help with bills, like suggesting I leave the house to them in advance, just to save taxes, like buying me a phone I didn't ask for, one that syncs with their accounts, their cloud, their control. But what they didn't expect was that I'd keep the old one, or that it would, by some strange miracle, catch a moment not meant for me. A moment where Marnie, my own daughter, laughed and whispered to her husband, "She'll never see it coming." She's right, not because I'm too slow, but because I've spent my whole life loving her. Because until now, I never imagined I'd need to protect myself from my own child. But that's exactly what I'm going to do. I didn't tell them I'd kept the phone. That would have ruined everything too soon. Instead, I set the new one they gave me on the charger by the window like a good little retiree and left the old flip one where it's always lived, tucked behind the flour tin on a soft cloth, screen inward. I wipe it down like a ritual. It's not sentimentality. It's survival now. They think I'm scatterbrained, so I let them think it. Let Marnie explain things twice with that tone, the one that always lands somewhere between concern and condescension. Let Charles say things like, "Have you considered simplifying your finances?" As if the word simplifying means surrender. I listen. I nod. I make notes on a pad they never notice, buried beneath magazines they assume I don't read. And I watch. They're getting bolder. That's the thing about people who think they're winning. They start showing their teeth. Last Thursday, Marnie arrived without calling first. I was out back pruning the rose bush Henry planted our second summer in this house. I still keep it trimmed low, close to the ground. It doesn't bloom much anymore, but it's stubborn, like me. I heard the back door open. "Mom," she called, loud enough for the neighborhood. "Why is the lock changed?" I walked in slowly, gloves in hand, pruning shears still tucked in my apron. "I had a new deadbolt installed," I said calmly. "The old one stuck sometimes." Marnie didn't answer right away. She stood in the doorway like she wasn't sure whether to scold or pretend to smile. Then she spotted the phone on the windowsill, the new one. "Are you using it?" she asked, gesturing toward it. "I tried," I lied. "But I keep pressing the wrong spot." She laughed. "It just takes time. I can set up voice commands for you." "No need," I said. "I've been using the old one for calls. Easier on the fingers." Marnie's face stiffened. Not visibly, not for someone who doesn't know her, but I saw it. The way her chin lifted slightly, the way her gaze slid off me like I was a reflection in glass. "You really should retire that thing," she said. "It's unreliable." "So am I smiled. "We're a good pair." She didn't laugh, just walked into the kitchen and began opening drawers. Looking for what? I still don't know. Later that night, when I opened the old phone again, I found another recording. It had been running since her visit started. I hadn't meant for it to. I'd simply pressed the wrong button when tucking it back behind the tin. But the thing about old technology is that it doesn't apologize for doing exactly what you told it to do. The file was short. 4 minutes. But it was enough. I heard her voice first. Low. Sharper now that she thought I wasn't in the room. "She's still got that damn phone," she whispered. "If she uses it too much longer, it'll die on its own. Honestly, Charles, we need to push this forward." Then silence. Some rustling. "I'm not waiting another year," she continued. "If we wait until she's in the hospital or something, we won't have the paperwork in place. We need access. Sooner, not later." I sat with the phone pressed to my chest. She hadn't known she was being recorded. She hadn't known I was in earshot. She'd simply spoken the way people do when no one's listening. And now I had proof. The thing about betrayal is that it doesn't come all at once. It comes in increments, small slips, offhand comments, hesitations that feel like nothing until they gather into a weight you can't lift anymore. I didn't cry. I boiled water. I poured it over Earl Grey leaves. I added honey. Then I sat on the porch and watched the light leave the sky. The world didn't end. That's the strange part. But something inside me shifted. Not loudly, not in a blaze, just quietly, like a door swinging shut after standing open too long. That night, I opened a folder I hadn't touched in 3 years. "Estate documents," it read, in Henry's handwriting. Sharp and small, with little hooks on the ends of letters. Inside were copies of the deed, the will we'd written together in '09, bank statements, a notarized letter giving me sole authority over all assets. I reviewed every page. Then I picked up the phone, the new one this time, and made an appointment. Mr. Darrow's office hadn't changed much, still smelled faintly of lemon polish and paper. The secretary offered me tea. I said no. My hands were too steady for tea. "Mrs. Ames," he said, smiling, "to what do I owe the pleasure?" "I need to update everything," I said. "Will, power of attorney, trust documents, all of it." He raised a brow. "Sudden change?" "Not sudden," I said. "Just overdue." We spent 2 hours going over every detail. I named no names, offered no accusations, just dates, numbers, instructions. When it was done, I felt no triumph, just a quiet readiness, because love can cover things, but it shouldn't blind you. And from now on, I intend to see everything. The morning after I visited Mr. Darrow, I woke earlier than usual. I hadn't even needed the alarm. My body was ready, alert, like it had remembered a rhythm it hadn't used in years. I put on the cardigan with the reinforced elbows, the one Henry used to tease me about. "You wear that like armor, Ellie." Maybe I do. It's wool and truth. It makes me feel capable. By 8, I had already boiled eggs, emptied the dishwasher, and set aside the documents Mr. Darrow had asked me to review again before our next meeting. The copy of the trust account sat in a manila envelope with my name neatly typed across the front. Eleanor M. Ames. Private. I stared at that name a long time. It's a strange thing to feel yourself returning to your own life after being slowly pushed out of it. At 9:12, Marnie arrived. She didn't knock. She never knocks anymore. Just used her spare key and breezed in like the house was already hers. "Hi, Mom," she called, sing-song, dropping her purse on the bench by the door. "I brought you that joint supplement we talked about, the one with turmeric and whatever." I was sitting at the kitchen table, my tea still warm. She looked fresh-faced, hair back in a sleek bun, dressed in one of those wrinkle-free travel blouses she likes so much. Professional, polished, ready. I didn't say much, just thanked her and motioned to the kettle. She didn't want tea. "I was thinking," she said, sliding into the chair across from me without asking, "we should talk about next steps. You know, for the house, for your comfort." She used that word a lot lately. Comfort. As if comfort was something you lost when you aged, unless someone younger arranged it for you. "Next steps?" I asked gently. "Well," she said, leaning in as if we were co-conspirators, "you've always said you wanted to stay in the house as long as you could. But realistically, Mom, it's getting to be a lot. The lawn, the plumbing, the roof." "I had the roof fixed," I said. She blinked. "You did?" "Last year, quietly, with my own money." She faltered, just for a second, before recovering. "Well, that's great, of course. But long term, we need to be practical. Charles has been doing some research. There's a place in Wexford, very nice, fully staffed, lots of women your age. They even have book clubs." A pause. "Is this something you want?" I asked her. "What do you mean?" "This idea, this plan. Is it something you want, or something you think I should want?" Marnie didn't answer right away. She reached into her purse and pulled out a brochure. Glossy, colorful, with a picture of two women in cardigans laughing on a park bench. "Mom," she said, voice softening, "you deserve to relax. Let someone else handle things for once. Why not enjoy yourself while you still can?" I smiled then, a small, quiet smile, because she didn't hear the insult in her own words. "I'm not tired, Marnie," I said. "Not of this house, not of my routines, not of this life." She sighed, folding the brochure closed. "Okay, we don't have to decide today." Then she changed tactics. "There's something Charles wanted me to bring by. Some forms. Just housekeeping. Simple stuff. He said you could look them over when you had time." She slid a thin blue folder across the table. I didn't open it. Instead, I reached into the drawer beside me and pulled out an envelope. It was white, unmarked, and already sealed. I placed it gently on top of the blue folder. "What's this?" she asked. "A copy," I said, "of the new trust, and my updated will, just so you're informed." She didn't touch it. Her face, always so carefully arranged, twitched. Not much, just enough. "Updated?" she repeated. "Yes. Mr. Darrow helped me with it. Lovely man, still sharp as ever." "Why didn't you tell me?" "You didn't ask." She swallowed hard. Her hands, which had been resting lightly on the table, curled slightly. "I thought we were working together on all this." "No, Marnie," I said calmly. "You were working on something. I was waiting to see what it was." She stared at me a long time. Then, slowly, she stood. "Well," she said, smoothing her blouse, "I should get going. Charles is waiting." I nodded. She picked up the blue folder, but not the envelope I gave her, and paused at the door. "Are you angry with me?" I looked at her then. Really looked. My daughter. My only child. The baby I once rocked to sleep during thunderstorms. The teenager I waited up for when she missed curfew. The young woman I helped through 2 miscarriages and a broken marriage. I thought about the recording on my old phone. The way she laughed, the way she whispered, "She'll never see it coming." "No," I said finally. "I'm not angry." And I wasn't. I was awake. That's worse. Marnie didn't come by for a week after that. Not a call, not a message, just silence. The kind that used to mean someone was cooling off, back when we still believed in reconciliations. But I knew better now. Silence wasn't a pause. It was a strategy. Charles, on the other hand, showed up the following Thursday. Alone. I wasn't surprised. He pulled up in that Navy SUV of his, the one with the leather seats and GPS that talks like a kindergarten teacher. I watched from the kitchen window as he adjusted his blazer in the side mirror before stepping out. Always rehearsed. Always composed. I didn't go to the door. Let him knock. 3 raps. Firm. Impatient. I opened it, wiping my hands on a dish towel. "Charles," I said, "to what do I owe the honor?" He smiled, wide and toothy, but his eyes weren't smiling. "Thought I'd check in," he said. "Marnie mentioned you'd updated your estate planning. Figured we could sit down, make sure everyone's on the same page." "Whose page would that be?" I asked, stepping aside. He didn't laugh, just walked in, straight into my kitchen, like he always had the right. "Coffee?" I offered. "No thanks. I'm on my way to a meeting." "Of course." He pulled out a chair, sat, then placed a sleek manila folder on the table between us, just like his wife had done. "Some paperwork," he said casually. "Stuff we talked about months ago, remember? For your accounts. It's not urgent, but better to be proactive." I didn't touch the folder. I poured myself a cup of coffee and sat down across from him. "Remind me," I said, "what these are for again?" He smiled, but it was thinner this time. "Just basic authorizations. Helps if, say, you get hospitalized or need help managing bills. It saves time." "I see." He waited. I took a sip of coffee. "Have you spoken with Mr. Darrow?" I asked. His expression flickered. "Just a second." "No," he said too quickly. "Why?" "He's the one who drafted the new documents. I thought you might want to coordinate." Charles leaned back in his chair, arms crossing. "Eleanor, no offense, but you're not getting any younger. This house, your accounts, it's a lot. We just want to help. But when you keep us at arm's length, it complicates everything." There it was. The real tone. The one he saved for boardrooms and late-night negotiations. I set down my mug. "Charles," I said, "let me make something clear." He raised his eyebrows. "This house is mine. Bought and paid for with my husband's work and my own hands. These accounts, that money, came from decades of pinching pennies, from Henry fixing furnaces after hours, from me cleaning library shelves well past retirement age." He started to speak. I held up my hand. "You and Marnie didn't build any of it. You may have plans. You may have ideas. But you don't have rights. Not here, not now." Silence stretched between us like a tablecloth someone forgot to iron. "I've always been polite," I continued. "Too polite, probably. I let you treat this house like a waiting room. I let Marnie joke about my habits like I was already fading. But let me be clear. I'm not confused. I'm not weak. And I'm not yours to manage." Charles stared at me, expression unreadable. Then, slowly, he stood. "I'll tell Marnie you're not ready," he said. I stood too. "You can tell Marnie whatever you want," I said. "But be careful with your stories, because I have a few of my own now." He didn't ask what I meant. He just picked up his folder and walked out without another word. When the door shut, I didn't sit right away. I walked to the living room, opened the small fireproof box beneath the old armchair, and placed the phone inside. The old one. with the recordings. I locked the box. Then I sat on the edge of the chair and folded my hands. There comes a point in a woman's life, especially one who's spent most of it being accommodating, where she realizes that silence only protects those who benefit from it. That point had come for me, and I wasn't silent anymore. The day after Charles left, I called Mr. Darrow again. "I want everything finalized," I told him. "No delays, no loose ends. I don't want anyone accessing anything without going through me or my appointed trustee." He didn't ask questions this time. He simply said, "Understood, Mrs. Ames. I'll prepare the last round of documents and schedule the notary." That night, I sat at the kitchen table with a pen in my hand and a stack of papers spread out in front of me. Every page was a line in the sand. The trust, the revised will, the revocation of the old power of attorney Marnie had slipped in front of me 4 years ago. The one I'd never signed, though she still liked to pretend otherwise. Everything was in order now. I made my granddaughter Anna the secondary trustee. She's only 22, still in college, still believes in people. But she calls me. She asks questions that don't end in requests. And when I send her money for books or food, she thanks me twice, once with words and once just by showing up. Henry would have liked her. She reads even when no one's assigning it. I signed everything slowly, neatly, the way we were taught in school, as if my name was still worth something. The next morning, I went to the bank. The branch manager, a young man named Kyle with a too big watch and 2 small shoes, looked surprised to see me with papers in hand. "I need to change beneficiaries," I told him, "and remove any outside access to these accounts." He blinked. "All outside access?" "Yes. Even your daughter's? She's listed." "She's nothing," I said, not unkindly. "Not anymore. Please remove her immediately." Kyle nodded, mouth pressed into a line. He clicked away at his keyboard while I watched the morning sun shift on the tile floor. A quiet sort of satisfaction bloomed inside me. Not joy, not revenge, just the steady warmth of something put right. When I left the bank, I didn't go home right away. Instead, I drove out to the edge of town, to a little diner Henry and I used to visit after church. It hasn't changed much. Same vinyl booths, same bell over the door that rings like a bicycle handle. I took a booth by the window and ordered black coffee and a slice of apple pie. The waitress, maybe 50, smiled at me the way people used to smile before everything became transactional. "You look like a woman with a mission," she said. "I suppose I am," I replied. She winked and walked away. I didn't bring the documents with me. I didn't need to. I carried enough of the past inside my head. It's a strange thing, watching your own child turn into someone you don't recognize. Marnie was born on a cold January night. I labored through a storm to bring her into the world. I remember holding her, thinking her fingers were too small to ever hold anything heavy. But they hold plenty now. Judgment, distance, entitlement. She learned early that charm gets you further than kindness. And Charles? He only ever wanted control. He married a woman with aging parents and saw opportunity. Maybe Marnie saw it too. I gave them so many chances. I invited them to holidays, birthdays, quiet weekends with tea and board games. And every time, I was met with disinterest or performance. They never stayed long. They never called unless something was needed. Love doesn't vanish all at once. It unravels. A pulled thread here, a snapped stitch there. But eventually, the whole thing falls apart. And what's left is a choice. Mourn the fabric or pick up the needle. I chose the needle. Back home, I placed copies of the new paperwork in 3 different folders. One for Mr. Darrow, one for the bank, and one for the fireproof box. I made a fourth set for Anna, sealed it with a note. This is not a gift. It's a safeguard. Use it only if necessary. And never forget who you are, even if others do. I signed it with my full name. Not Grandma. Not Mom. Just me. That evening, I sat on the porch with a blanket over my legs and watched the neighbor's dog bark at a squirrel on the fence. The world didn't look different, but I did. And that was enough. It had been years since I visited Margaret Halcombe. We used to call each other every few weeks, meet at the co-op once a month. But life, and then grief, and then inertia, those things pile up. Sometimes you don't even notice when a friendship goes into hibernation. You just wake up one morning and realize it's been 7 years since you last hugged someone who knew you before your hair turned white. But Margaret was the only person I could think to tell. Not about everything. Not yet. But enough. Enough to hear my own voice out loud saying what I'd been holding in. I called her on a Sunday. "Margaret, it's Eleanor." "Lord in heaven," she said, not even trying to hide the shock in her voice. "Are you alive or a ghost?" "Alive, I think. Some days." "Well, don't waste another word. Are you coming to see me? Or should I dig out the Buick and come get you myself?" I smiled into the receiver. Her voice hadn't changed a note. "I'll come to you, Tuesday?" "Tuesday's good. I'll make those biscuits you like. We'll pretend we're 30 again." I arrived just after noon, a 2-hour drive north, through country roads flanked with leafless trees and fields waiting for spring. Margaret lived in a clapboard farmhouse with blue shutters and a garden that had always looked effortless, though she once confessed to weeding it at night with a flashlight after work. She opened the door in a cardigan too big for her shoulders and hugged me hard, the way only someone with nothing to prove can hug. "Sit," she said, ushering me into the kitchen. "I made soup, and I have questions." I let the warmth of her house soak into my skin. The kitchen smelled like rosemary and flour, and for a moment I could almost believe I was just visiting, just catching up, just two old friends avoiding the ache in their hips. But Margaret was never one for delay. "So what's happened?" she asked, setting a bowl in front of me. "You don't drive 2 hours just for biscuits." I hesitated. Then I said it. "My daughter is trying to take my house." Margaret didn't blink. "Of course she is," she said calmly. "They all try. What's the plan?" And just like that, I could breathe. I told her about the new phone, the recordings, the paperwork, the trust. I left out certain things, the sharpest edges, but gave her enough to understand the picture. She listened without flinching, hands folded over her teacup, nodding slowly. When I was done, she didn't offer comfort. She offered something better. "You're doing the right thing," she said, "and you're not crazy. Don't let them make you feel crazy for protecting yourself." I didn't want it to come to this. "It never starts this way," she said. "But honey, you get to a certain age and people stop seeing you. They see your property, your bank account, your square footage, your perceived weakness, but not you." We sat in silence for a while. Then she reached over and squeezed my hand. "Whatever you do," she said, "don't give them a single inch back. Not one." I nodded. She poured us each another cup of tea. Later, before I left, she handed me a small envelope. "Just in case," she said. "My brother works in private security. If things get messy and you need a witness or backup, call him. He's discreet and loyal." I took it. I didn't say no. There was a time I would have, but not now. When I got home that night, the porch light was on. I hadn't left it that way. Inside, nothing seemed out of place. But the air felt different, slightly off, like someone had opened a drawer and then smoothed it shut again. I checked the old phone. No new recordings. But I left it charging, just in case. Because if they had started checking, if they were getting nervous, that meant they felt something shifting. Good. They should. Because I wasn't just protecting my house anymore. I was protecting myself. And this time, I wasn't going to apologize for it. It started with small things. That's how they always test the waters. The spare key on the back porch hook went missing. I noticed it the morning after I returned from Margaret's. I'd hung it there for the electrician last fall and forgotten to take it back down. Foolish, I know. But I'd always assumed no one but family even noticed it. I didn't mention it to Marnie. I didn't call the locksmith either. Not yet. Instead, I replaced it with an old blank key from Henry's toolbox and waited. 2 days later, the side gate was unlatched. That gate sticks, always has, and it creaks when it swings. Henry meant to oil it, but some things just stay the way they are. I heard it open at 3 a.m, soft but clear, through the open kitchen window. I didn't move, just listened. No steps, no voices, and then nothing. The next morning, I walked the perimeter of the yard. No prints, no damage. Just that open gate and the feeling of a boundary crossed. I didn't feel afraid. That surprised me. Instead, I felt steady. Something in me had solidified since Margaret. Something that didn't need panic to recognize danger. That afternoon, Marnie called. "Hey, Mom," she said, breezy. "Just checking in. Haven't heard from you." I sipped my tea before answering. "I've been fine," I said. "Just busy with some things around the house." "You should have called," she said quickly. "You know I worry when I don't hear from you." "Worry?" I repeated, careful to keep my tone light. "Well, I haven't changed my routines." She hesitated, then shifted tones. "Listen," she said. "I've been thinking. Maybe we got off on the wrong foot the other day. Charles didn't mean to push anything. He was just being practical." And I know I can be assertive, but it's because I care. We both do. "Of course," I said. Pause. "I was thinking," she continued, "maybe we could take a look at your accounts together. Not to change anything, just to make sure everything's set up properly. That way, if anything ever happened—" "I already did," I interrupted. "What do you mean?" "I reviewed everything with Mr. Darrow. Everything is up to date. Nothing further is needed." The silence on her end was long enough to sip again. "Well," she said finally, "that's good. I just wanted to help." "I know," I said, "and I appreciate that. But everything's in order." She didn't call the next day. Or the one after. Instead, Charles came by again. This time, he didn't bring forms. He brought charm. "Hey there, Eleanor," he said, stepping onto the porch like he hadn't stormed off just a week earlier. "I was in the neighborhood. Thought I'd see how you're doing." "I'm fine," I said. "I was just about to start lunch." He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Mind if I sit for a minute?" I gestured toward the rocker on the far end of the porch, the one that creaked if you leaned too far back. Henry always said it was the seat for people who needed reminding not to get too comfortable. Charles sat. We talked about nothing. Weather. Road work. He asked about the roses. I answered in clipped sentences. I let the silence fill in the rest. Then he said, too casually, "Marnie's been worried. Said you've been pulling away." We don't want you feeling isolated, Eleanor. I smiled politely. I've always enjoyed solitude. It's just, she gets anxious. We both do. You know how these things go. Families drift. Then something happens and everyone says they should have checked in more often. I looked at him steadily. Something like what, Charles? He blinked. I'm just saying, health changes quickly at your age. Mine's too. Ah, there it was, not even subtle this time. I nodded slowly, as if considering. Well, I said, my doctor seems satisfied with both. He shifted in the chair. You know we just want what's best. For whom? He stood then, straightening his sleeves. The smile dropped. You can't do everything alone forever, Eleanor. Sooner or later, someone's going to have to step in. I rose, too. Maybe, I said. But it won't be you. He didn't answer, just turned and walked down the steps. After he drove off, I went straight to the fireproof box and checked the phone. Still there, still charged, still containing every word from the night they thought I was asleep. I backed up the files to a thumb drive. Labeled it. Home Recordings E. Then I called Margaret. Is that offer from your brother still good? I asked. Absolutely. I'd like to talk to him. She didn't ask why, and I didn't explain. Because when people start trying to make you doubt your own mind, it means they're preparing to steal more than your things. They're coming for your voice, and I intend to keep mine. He came with papers. Not a surprise. What surprised me was that he came alone. No Marnie, no boys, not even a casual, we thought we'd drop in. Just Charles on a Tuesday morning, standing on my porch in a pressed shirt and an expression too calm to trust. I didn't open the door right away. Instead, I stood behind the curtain, watching him knock twice, then wait with his head tilted, like a man confident of the outcome. I let a full minute pass before turning the knob. Charles, I said. He smiled. Morning, Eleanor. Sorry to drop in, but I was hoping we could go over a few things together. His hand lifted. And there it was. A folder. Always a folder. Just some basics, he added. Verification forms, a couple asset summaries, routine stuff. Routine for whom? He laughed lightly, the way people do when they want you to feel foolish for questioning. Nothing binding, just housekeeping. I stepped aside, not to welcome him in, but to keep the storm door from bouncing back against my knee. He took it as invitation, of course. Walked in like he owned the air. We sat at the kitchen table, where sunlight slanted through the blinds and lit the rim of my coffee cup. I didn't offer him anything. He didn't ask. He opened the folder. Inside, printed forms, pre-filled, some signed already. This first one just confirms access, he said. For emergency contacts, you know, so we can act quickly if needed. I scanned the top line. Authorization for transfer of real property. He watched my face too closely. You sure this is the right document? I asked. It's just a standard template. We use it for convenience. Convenient for who? I asked again. He shifted in his seat. Look, Eleanor, I don't want to get into a whole thing. Marnie's just trying to make sure everything's handled. If something happens to you, there's going to be questions about the house, your accounts, your care. This just clears the path. No, Charles, I said. This clears me out of the way. He said nothing. I leaned forward. I have my own attorney. I have a living trust. I have a locked safe and witnesses and a folder full of facts. He didn't move. So tell me again, I continued, why you think I'd sign this. He looked down, smoothed the paper with one finger, then, Almost softly, he said, "Because eventually, Eleanor, people stop fighting. It's just time. You've had a good run. No one wants to see things get difficult." I felt something shift behind my ribs. "Difficult," I repeated. He nodded. "If this becomes a legal matter—" "It is a legal matter," I interrupted. "And the law isn't on your side?" He chuckled once. "You think that matters?" I stood. He didn't. I walked to the drawer beneath the microwave and pulled out a small envelope. Inside, it was a copy of the letter I'd drafted after our last encounter. The one addressed to my attorney and CC'd to Margaret's brother, outlining everything that had happened, including the visits, the pressure, the attempted manipulation. I placed it on the table between us. "This is what gets opened if you try anything else," I said. Charles didn't touch it, just stared at me like I'd become a different woman while he wasn't looking. "I always knew you were sharp," he said quietly, "but I didn't expect spite." "That's because you mistook silence for softness," I said. "You thought my quiet meant agreement. It never did." He closed the folder. "I'll talk to Marnie." "You do that." "And Eleanor?" I raised my eyebrows. "You're making this harder than it has to be." "No," I said. "I'm making it as hard as it should be." He left without another word. When I locked the door behind him, my hands weren't shaking. Instead, I felt calm. The kind that settles over you when you finally say out loud what you've known for months. I may be old, but I am not theirs. The next move was hers. It came 2 days later, like clockwork. A knock on the door just after sunset, when the sky was bruised with orange and the sparrows had gone quiet. I opened it slowly, knowing who I'd find before I even touched the handle. Marnie stood there, holding a covered dish. Lasagna. That was her tell. She only cooked for me when she needed something softened. "Hey, Mom," she said, too brightly. "Thought you might like something warm tonight." I looked at the dish, then at her. "I'm not sick," I said. "I didn't say you were." "You usually wait until I fall before you bring a casserole." She exhaled through her nose, a smile flickering and dying all in the same second. "Can I come in?" I stepped back, without answering. She walked past me like she owned the place, set the lasagna down on the counter, peeled back the foil. "I used the good ricotta," she said. "The one you always liked." I watched her work, the way she busied her hands, kept her back half-turned. It was her oldest trick. Do something practical, and maybe the truth would feel less intrusive. She turned, finally, and leaned against the counter. "We need to talk," she said. "I figured." She paused. "I know Charles came by. He told me how it went." "Did he mention the part where I told him to stop?" She pressed her lips together. "Mom, we're not trying to hurt you." "No," I said. "You're just trying to erase me in advance." Her face flushed. "That's not fair." "Isn't it?" She stepped forward. "You've always been independent. I admire that. But this paranoia, the lawyers, the paperwork, it's extreme." I looked at her. "My independence never bothered you before, until it got in the way." She faltered. "Things are complicated," she said. "Charles is under a lot of pressure. The boys have school. We're just trying to plan, that's all." I said nothing. She shifted. "And I don't know what you think you heard that night, but we weren't planning anything sinister." I tilted my head. "You know exactly what I heard." Her eyes flashed. "You were eavesdropping?" "No. My phone recorded you." The words dropped like stones. She blinked. "What?" "You mocked me for keeping it," I said. "But that phone heard every word, every plan, every lie." Her jaw tightened. "You can't just—" You're twisting things. Am I? I walked to the drawer and pulled out the printed transcript. Just the first page. I laid it on the table between us. She stared at it, then at me, and for a moment, I saw something flicker behind her eyes. Not regret, not shame, just calculation. How long have you been planning this? She asked, voice cold. Since the first time you spoke about me like I wasn't in the room. She nodded slowly. So what now? You want an apology? No, I said. I want you to stop pretending you're protecting me. And I want you to understand that I'm not yours to manage. Marnie looked at me like she was trying to see someone she hadn't really looked at in years. Then she picked up the paper, folded it in half, tucked it into her purse without asking. You think this makes you safe? She asked. I think it makes me clear. She turned toward the door, and just before she stepped outside, she looked back and said, You don't know what you've started. I met her eyes. No, I said. You don't. The door closed behind her. The lasagna sat untouched on the counter. I let it cool. Then I scraped it into the trash. Because comfort isn't worth accepting from someone who wants to bury you beneath it. The next week passed in silence. No calls, no knocks, no emails from Charles pretending to be helpful. Not even a spam message on the new phone they gave me. The one I now kept turned off in the drawer with my expired coupons and a flashlight that barely worked. At first, the quiet felt like a gift. But by day 4, I recognized it for what it was. A pause, not a retreat. I'd spent enough years in a house full of books to know the pattern of strategy. You don't strike back in anger. You wait. You study. You reshape your approach until it looks like something else entirely. That's when the letter arrived. Not handwritten, not warm. Just a standard envelope. Typed label, no return address. I knew it was from them the second I pulled it from the mailbox. The kind of mail that doesn't breathe. Inside, a printed copy of a medical power of attorney form. Blank. Unsigned. But pre-marked where to initial. Along with a sticky note. For your peace of mind. Love, M. Love, my foot. I laid it on the kitchen table and stared at it while the kettle boiled. I didn't need a doctor's letter to know what this was. It was the next front, control through care. Disguised as concern. Disguised as kindness. Disguised as legal logistics. It's always disguised when it comes from people who want access. I burned the note over the sink. That night, I opened the fireproof box again. Not to listen, just to see it. That phone, still holding the truth like a lantern inside it. I kept thinking about that moment in the dining room. Her voice lowered, that laugh she'd let slip. The way she'd said, she'll never see it coming. She said it like I wasn't a person, like I was a delay. I don't know when my daughter stopped seeing me. Not as a burden, not as an obligation, but as a woman. A whole woman. With thoughts. With memory. With a spine. Maybe it was gradual. Maybe I helped her do it by always stepping aside, by saying thank you too often, by laughing off things that should have broken something between us. That's what women of my generation were taught. Keep the peace. Keep your mouth shut. Be gracious. But all that grace left room, and they took it. I called Margaret the next morning. How fast can your brother come by? I asked. Today, if you want. I want. He arrived just after lunch. Not tall, not loud, but he moved like someone who was always taking notes. Introduced himself as Neil. Carried no briefcase, wore no tie. We sat in the sunroom. I told him everything. Every visit, every folder, every threat wrapped in affection. He nodded, asked quiet questions. Then he laid out options. People like your daughter and her husband, he said gently. They count on your hesitance, on your love. I know. And you still love her? I looked down at my hands. They weren't shaking. I don't know what I love anymore, but I know what I won't allow. He nodded again. Then he handed me a new folder. Inside, a full record protocol. 2-step locks for financial changes. Home security system recommendations. A direct line to a legal contact who specialized in elder asset protection. I signed the agreement. I paid the retainer. Neil left me with a small device, a voice-activated recorder, subtle, discreet. Just in case, he said. I placed it beside the old phone. Now I had 2 truths, one caught by accident, one waiting on purpose. The next day, I went into town and changed my post office box. Closed the old one entirely. Informed the bank to accept only in-person requests from me. Updated my file at the clinic. Told the front desk I'd need confirmation before any family accessed my records. When I returned home, I made tea and sat in the chair by the front window. Nothing had happened yet. No fire, no battle, no demand. But I could feel the storm gathering. And for the first time in a long while, I wasn't waiting for it to pass. I was ready to meet it. It was Anna who broke the silence. She called late in the evening, just after 8. Not a text, not a voicemail, a real call. The old phone buzzed in its charger nook behind the flour tin, and I almost didn't hear it over the kettle whistling. "Grandma?" she said when I answered, voice tight, hesitant. "Yes, love. I'm here." There was a pause. Then, "Is it true?" I didn't ask what she meant. There was only one it between us now. "Did your mother call you?" I asked. "She didn't have to," she said. "I came home for the weekend and overheard her talking to Charles. She said you were getting paranoid, that you'd hired a lawyer, that you were locking them out of everything." I sat down slowly, the old wood of the kitchen chair creaking under my weight. My tea went cold beside me. "Did she sound worried?" "No," Anna said. "She sounded irritated, like you'd made things inconvenient." I closed my eyes for a moment. "She also said you recorded something from a dinner a while ago. She didn't know the details, but Charles kept asking if there were copies." "There are," I said softly. "And you're one of them." Another pause. Then her voice dropped, filled with something I hadn't heard in it before. Not since she was a child and afraid of the dark. "Grandma, what did they do?" And I told her. Not every detail, not every folder or document or late-night whisper, but the shape of it. The pressure. The manipulation. The long, quiet erosion of trust. The way they'd started speaking about me as if I were a hurdle, not a human. I told her about the recordings. The visit from Charles. The cold dish of lasagna her mother left like an apology she never intended to mean. Anna didn't interrupt once. When I finished, she said only, "I'm so sorry." "You don't have to apologize for them." "No," she said, "but I need you to know I see you, and I believe you." Something in me ached at that. Because it had been so long since someone said those words. I asked where she was. "In my old room," she said. "I came to pick up a book. I'm staying with a friend this weekend. But I needed to hear your voice." "Are you safe?" "Yes." "Then that's enough for tonight." She promised to come by soon. Not for documents, not for discussion, just for tea. I stayed at the table after we hung up, letting the quiet settle around me. She knew now. That mattered. The next morning, I received a formal email from a legal address I didn't recognize, a name at the bottom I'd never seen. The subject line, intent to discuss family estate. No warmth, no pretense. They'd made it official. I forwarded it to Mr. Darrow, attached the file from Neil's firm. Then I walked outside and clipped the last of the dry rose branches from the bush Henry planted all those years ago. The thorns were still sharp. That made me smile. Inside, I called the clinic, asked to speak with Dr. Wilkins directly. When she came on the line, I told her plainly, "If anyone contacts you claiming I'm unwell, mentally or otherwise, I need you to call me first. Do not release records. Do not comply. I've listed you in my documents as my primary physician, and I trust your judgment." There was a pause, and then her voice. Kind, clear, no nonsense. "I understand, Mrs. Ames. You don't have to explain. I'll make the note myself." I thanked her, and for the rest of that day, I did nothing. No forms, no calls, no files. Just swept the porch, made soup, and listened to the sound of my own life. Quiet? Yes, but mine. Because when someone tries to erase you while you're still alive, the most powerful thing you can do is insist on your presence. And I was here, fully, unshakably, still here. The letter came by courier this time. Hand-delivered, no envelope. Just a man in a blazer and clipboard at my door asking me to sign for it. I did. I smiled. I closed the door quietly behind him. I already knew what it would say. Inside was a formal notification. Marnie and Charles were initiating a petition for conservatorship. Their claim was simple and familiar. Declining mental capacity. Inability to manage daily affairs. Financial confusion. The language was clinical, but the meaning wasn't. She's no longer fit to govern herself. We should be in charge. I sat at the kitchen table, the document in my lap, the edges trembling just slightly in my hands. I didn't feel surprised. I didn't feel afraid. I felt insulted. They had taken everything I'd done, the precision, the legal clarity, the safeguards, and decided none of it mattered if they told the right story loud enough. They weren't trying to prove I was incapable. They were hoping I'd be too exhausted to argue. I called Mr. Darrow first. He picked up on the second ring. "Tell me," he said, before I even spoke. "How bad is it?" I read the first paragraph aloud. When I finished, he sighed. "We've got what we need. Their petition will fall apart under scrutiny. The trust stands. Your directives are airtight. But Eleanor, they're escalating. That tells me they're desperate." "I know," I said. "And I'm ready." I hung up and went to the back room. Henry's old office, now more of a storage space, still filled with his notebooks and labeled boxes. I pulled out the one marked Utility Receipts, 1996-2007, and emptied it onto the floor. Then I placed everything else inside. The recordings, the printed transcripts, the copies of every letter and form, and the photos Margaret's brother had taken. Charles on my porch with documents, Marnie slipping into the side yard the night the gate creaked. I sealed the box, labeled it in black marker, if needed, EA. Then I wrote a letter, just a single page in my clearest handwriting. "To whom it may concern, if you are reading this, it means someone is attempting to erase the truth of my choices. This box contains my words, my voice, and the evidence of what was done behind closed doors. I am not confused. I am not unstable. I am not absent. I am here. Do not let them rewrite the facts. Eleanor M. Ames." I gave the box to Anna 3 days later. She came by without warning, hair pulled back, eyes tired but alert. "I heard," she said quietly. "I figured." She didn't ask what I needed from her. So I told her, if this gets worse, you take this to Darrow, directly. Not your mother, not Charles. You, she nodded. And you tell them, I said, that I'm not the one who needs supervision. She swallowed. Are you sure you're okay? I reached over and touched her hand. I'm better than I've been in years. Because that was the truth of it. They had forced me awake. And there's no returning to the sleep of permission once your dignity's been threatened. That night, I made a pot of tea and sat on the porch, just as the sun dipped below the fence line. The light was golden, stretched long across the grass, and I felt the weight of years in my bones. Not as a burden, but as armor. I thought of Marnie, and then I let her go. Because love, real love, doesn't mean submission, and age doesn't mean surrender, not anymore. The court date was set for the following Monday. Just a preliminary hearing, they said. Just a chance to clarify intent. But I knew what it was. It was a test. To see if I'd show up at all. To see if I'd tremble in the witness seat. If I'd stammer. Forget a date. Misstate a number. They didn't need a win, not yet. They just needed doubt. But I don't traffic in doubt anymore. That Monday morning, I dressed with intention. Navy skirt, cream blouse, the gray coat Henry gave me on our 40th. Not for nostalgia, for dignity. The kind you wear like a shield. I pinned my wedding ring to the inside hem of the coat. Quiet company. Anna picked me up at 10 sharp. She didn't speak much on the way, just kept one hand on the steering wheel, one curled tight in her lap. I could feel her nerves buzzing through the silence. You don't have to be afraid, I said softly. I'm not, she answered. I'm angry. Good. The courtroom wasn't dramatic. No oak panels, no stern gavel, just pale walls and beige carpet and people who looked like they'd rather be anywhere else. But at the front of the room, Marnie sat beside Charles, both of them poised like politicians. Marnie in a muted blazer, her hair in a knot that made her look like her own press secretary. She didn't look at me as I entered. I took my seat beside Mr. Darrow, who slid me a small notepad and whispered, "Just stay truthful. Nothing more." The judge, a woman, maybe my age, maybe slightly younger, read the initial petition aloud. I listened to my life summarized in 6 sentences. Widowed, 78, residing alone, recent unusual legal activity, family concern for mental capacity. No mention of the recordings. No mention of manipulation. Just a gentle push to plant a single idea. That I might be slipping. I waited for them to call me. They didn't. They called Charles. He stood, hand on his chest like he was delivering bad news to a congregation. He used words like vulnerability, pattern, late-stage cognitive fatigue. I watched the judge's face. She didn't react, just took notes. Then he said something that made the air in the room change. We've noticed episodes of confusion, repeated stories, paranoia. She's been erratic. My jaw tightened. When he sat, Marnie took the stand. She didn't cry. I'll give her that. She spoke like she was reading from a script. Our only goal is to protect her. We want to help. She refuses help. She's isolating. She's giving large sums of money to individuals we don't know. I knew what that was. The transfer to Anna, listed as trustee. A setup. Mr. Darrow stood when they finished. He called no witnesses. He handed the judge a folder. Quietly, respectfully. This, he said, contains notarized statements, financial records, updated legal directives, audio documentation, and proof of ongoing capacity assessments performed voluntarily by Mrs. Ames over the last 3 months. The judge flipped through it. Then he gestured to me. "Would you like to speak, Mrs. Ames?" I stood, walked forward slowly, not because I was unsteady, but because I wanted the room to see me move. My age on full display, but not my weakness. Because that's what they counted on. That age equals erasure. I faced the judge. "My name is Eleanor Ames," I said. "I am 78. I have buried a husband, raised a daughter, and managed a household through 35 years of a marriage that included layoffs, illness, and the death of a child." Marnie flinched. "Good. I have prepared my affairs with clarity and legality. My mind is sound. I read every page I signed. I retained my own attorney. I reviewed every clause, every line." I paused. The courtroom was still. "I am not confused. I am not erratic. I am inconvenient." I let that sit. Then I turned my eyes toward my daughter. And for the first time, I didn't soften them. When your children stop seeing you as a person, the first thing they do is translate your silence as weakness. But silence is often strategy. And I have been listening, watching, preparing. Back to the judge now. I have done nothing illegal, nothing irrational, only something unforgivable in the eyes of the entitled. I protected myself. That was all. I sat. The judge said she would review the documents and deliver a decision in writing. Formal, detached. But when we left the courtroom, I didn't need her verdict. I already knew mine. I had shown up, not to beg, not to plead, to confirm that I still stood and that they couldn't move me. The decision arrived 3 days later, a plain envelope hand-delivered again, but this time by someone from Mr. Darrow's office. A woman in her 40s with no clipboard, no hesitation. She smiled, handed me the envelope, and said, "You've got people on your side, Mrs. Ames. Just so you know." I waited until she drove off. Then I went inside, sat at the kitchen table with my tea, and opened the envelope with a butter knife. Inside, 2 sheets of thick white paper. The letterhead clean. The ruling simple. Petition for temporary conservatorship. Denied. Petitioner's concerns unsupported by evidence. Respondent demonstrates ongoing legal and financial competence. No further action recommended. I read it twice. Then once more, slowly, to feel each word settle. No victory dance. No fist in the air. Just stillness. That was all I needed. I placed the letter beside the recorder and the old phone. The truth had held. Not just because of facts, but because I had spoken. That afternoon, I baked. Not out of celebration, but out of ritual. That's what my hands knew how to do when peace returned. I made the lemon pound cake Henry used to ask for every spring, before the daffodils bloomed. The kitchen smelled like something right again. Anna came by just after 5. She didn't knock. She waited, hands in her jacket pockets, until I opened the door. "You won," she said. "No," I said. "I just didn't lose." She followed me into the kitchen and sat at the table where so many things had been decided without ever being spoken. I sliced 2 pieces of cake. She didn't eat hers right away. "She hasn't said a word," she said quietly. "Not to me. Not even to the boys." "I'm not expecting one." Anna nodded. "You should know. She's embarrassed. Not sorry, but rattled. That's her burden." "I think," Anna said, tracing the edge of her plate, "she thought you'd never fight back. That if it came down to it, you'd rather keep the peace than hold your ground." I didn't answer, because part of me had thought the same thing. But grief changes you. Loneliness, too. Not all at once, but quietly, slowly, Until one day, you wake up and realize you're the only one left to defend the version of yourself that others stopped believing in. Anna looked up. You know what Charles said to her last night? That you humiliated the family? I smiled. I didn't humiliate anyone. I just refused to vanish. She smiled back. Small, sad, proud. We didn't talk long after that. She had a train to catch, but before she left, she hugged me. Not out of pity, not out of worry, out of recognition. That's different. When she was gone, I sat alone in the quiet. And I felt full. Not with cake, not with relief, with certainty. Because the worst thing they tried to take from me wasn't the house or the money or the papers. It was the right to tell my story before someone else did. And now that I've told it, plainly, fully, and without apology, I want to leave you with something. If you're reading this, if someone passed it along or you found it late one night when the world felt heavier than usual, I want you to hear this part as clearly as I mean it. You are not fragile because you are older. You are not invisible because they've stopped looking. You are not confused because they call you difficult. You are not replaceable just because they're tired of waiting. And you are not alone. Speak. Even if your voice shakes. Even if they roll their eyes. Even if they've already decided what they think of you. Speak anyway. Because there's a difference between silence and peace. And you deserve the kind that doesn't cost you your name. If this story meant something to you, if it reminded you of someone or of yourself, share it. Maybe someone out there is still holding their breath, waiting to be allowed. Let this be their permission. Eleanor M. Ames. If this resonated with you, share it with someone who needs to be reminded they still have a voice. And if you'd like more stories like this, quiet, strong, and unafraid, follow along. Leave a comment. Let us know you're listening.